Hi, it's me, Ally, and there's this strange phenomenon that I've recently noticed within my movie watching experiences. You see, I've had this consistent streak of seeing boring and unmemorable movies that more often than not are sequels on Sundays. Sunday sequels, if you will. Now, Sunday has never been my favorite day of the week. It's always boring, there's nothing to do, and I feel that the quality of these movies is somehow intrinsically tied to the day that I watch them on. It might be because I subconsciously know that the movie will be mediocre, so I push off seeing it until Sunday. Maybe it's just because my mood makes me hate everything. Or it could be that there's some supernatural force that makes movies bad only on Sundays. I'm not sure, but it's piqued my curiosity, and I need to get down to the bottom of what makes these movies the way they are. I think I found the perfect candidate. Shrek 3 has always been sort of an enigma to me. The first two movies are some of the biggest cultural landmarks to come from animation as a medium, but the third one is rarely talked about, if even thought about at all. Even at the time, from what I can gather, no one really talked about this movie. Sure, they saw it, it was successful, but it didn't really stick in people's minds. Hell, even throughout my own childhood at that time, while Shrek 1 and 2 were both staples of this period in my life, I've never really sought out this movie until now, and I just wonder why. Why have so many people overlooked this movie? What contents of this movie have caused it to practically be erased from history? Why is it the greatest example of what makes a movie a Sunday sequel, and what even makes a Sunday sequel in the first place? Well, we'll start off with the basics. What is the plot of Shrek 3? Is the film about Shrek's struggle to become a father? Maybe it's about Shrek, Donkey, and Puss attempting to find the only living heir to the throne. Or is it about Prince Charming attempting to exact revenge upon Shrek after the events of the last movie? Perhaps it was about Fiona learning to be autonomous from her husband? Or maybe it's about the military coup that takes place in order to fill the power vacuum left by the late King Harold. Maybe it's about Donkey and Puss learning to overcome the differences by swapping bodies. Maybe it's about Shrek bonding with the kid over daddy issues. Maybe it's something completely fucking different. Okay, it's very clear that this movie has a huge overcrowding problem. The movie is just filled to the brim with unnecessary characters, plot points, and story arcs. I mean, Shrek literally goes to high school in this movie to pick up a character whose literal only purpose is to whine about becoming a king and bond with Shrek over daddy issues. If that's not the epitome of unnecessary sequel tropes, I don't know what is. But setting that aside, it's not like the writers didn't have any good ideas. Prince Charming's subplot is somewhat interesting and could have been explored more in the movie. His character motivations of only wanting to get his revenge on Shrek is unique and interesting. He even has this whole theater motif going on with him, but he's overshadowed by everything else in this mess of a movie. Every new character is as boring and bare bones as you could possibly write them, while the returning characters are dumbed down to be completely one note. Donkey and Puss has just become comedic relief without any actual personalities. Fiona has all but fallen to the sideline, and even Shrek has become uncharacteristically irresponsible. Okay, I hear you say, maybe the build-up isn't that good, but what about the climax of the movie? Surely that has to be good at the very least. I mean, it's not like Shrek 2 had one of the best scenes in movie history or anything, and the rest of that movie was boring as shit. What could the finale to this movie hold that would be so bad that it has to even be brought up? Well, they talk. Shrek gets stabbed, but not really, cause Charming has to work on his aim, I guess. And Charming gets hit with a save trap. That's pretty funny, I suppose, but none of this has any emotional impact. I am a firm believer in the idea that a good climax can rectify a mediocre or bad movie. It worked for Shrek 2, and that's literally only the previous movie in the franchise. They build up this grand finale for the entire movie with the whole military coup and all. They even have Shrek captured so that he can be slaughtered live on stage. However, it just comes crashing down when Shrek is saved by all these new characters in the movie. Their personalities are just not enough to hold a scene, and this shows. Artie, Shrek's daddy issues vent bitch, literally just gives a speech which resolves the conflict instantly. Like, all the villains just give up on their motivations just because he says, you guys can be good too. It's so contrived that I'm honestly shocked. This is something that a 5-year-old or a 4-kids dub editor would write, not an actual team of professional writers. It completely removes all stakes from the scene in an instant and makes you question why there was conflict in the first place. Why didn't they notice these things about themselves before they agreed to overthrow the government? Why didn't they remember that they've been systematically oppressed for years by the very system that they are so easily convinced to side with? Why is Charming the only one who sees through these blatant lies? This is literally the blandest way they could have chosen to end the movie. They could have at least had a cool fight scene with all the characters that they have in this movie. I swear the total count must be somewhere in the hundreds, but no, they just talk. Honestly, I could go on and on about how bad the writing is, but we have to talk about other things. Like the aesthetics! They're garbage! Now to be fair, I've never liked the look of the other Shrek movies. The first one is all just green, or Boring Kingdom, or Lava Castle, but at least it was visually consistent. Even the second movie, while not being as visually consistent as the first, at least took the time to establish a world that fits its fish out of water theme. But this movie is a fucking disaster. They have a high school, they have a rock hut in the forest, they have the apocalypse. Is there anything that connects these elements? No. Well, other than not fitting in with the movie's theme anyways. What even was the movie's theme in the first place? Shrek's struggle to become a good father? That sucks. Go back to the drawing board. It's no wonder why these locales are so boring. The bad writing goes hand in hand with the uninspired settings. If there's no underlying theme to center the visual storytelling around, it's just gonna make everything worse. Like, take Shrek 2 for example. Its script establishes a theme that gives consistency to the world that, in turn, helps create interesting situations that push the script along. These two parts of the movie need to work in tandem with each other to make a decent movie. If one is lacking, the whole movie is just brought down. Notice how I only said decent though. Not good, not great, just okay. That's because this is only a mere basic principle, a simple requirement of film writing and visuals. You need to do a lot more than create a consistent movie to be considered everything above par for the course. Shrek 3 does not do this and is thusly considered a garbage bad movie. Honestly, a lot of Sunday sequels suffer from these problems, and they all share the same common stem. Why is this so common? Well, for one thing, they're sequels. Yeah, I know, it's an edgy and overplayed point, but hear me out. They're mad because they're almost guaranteed to succeed. This means that studios can restrict the film's budget and shorten the team's deadlines because they don't need to make the film good again, because they don't need to capture audience attention again. After all, they're already going to see this movie based on the franchise alone. From an executive's perspective, this is basically just guaranteed profit. But from your average crew member's point of view, this is a nightmare and a half. This means that they have less time to work out the individual parts of a film. The crunch leads to boring, uninspired, incoherent, and even downright awful films. Remember, lazy writing is not a product of lazy writers. It's sort of a misnomer in that way. Inefficient workers don't get to keep their jobs. They are a detriment to the entire operation and only serve to waste the already constrained budget. Rather, it's a product of a rushed production schedule. There's not enough time to fully flesh out the characters, themes, and even the plot itself. It's more slapdash writing, if anything. They don't have the time to make a fully original story, and the studios are more likely than not completely fine with this. After all, to them, sequels are just an easy way to make money. Money that in turn can be used to finance more experimental and original movies, and fill in the gaps between releases. These sequels are almost always sandwiched between two original movies. That's because they're B-list projects with less time and money put into them, at least in terms of the actual production anyways. There's massive parts of allocated budget spent on rehiring celebrity voice actors and marketing. Not all of the budget goes to the crew, only a fraction does. And if we didn't have these fill-in movies, we would have less offerings in terms of animation. We're already starved for animated films as is. Without sequels, the already sparse release schedule would have more long and boring hiatuses. Furthermore, if these sequels weren't made, animation as a whole would become a lot riskier and unrewarding as a way to produce films. There's a reason that new faces on the animation scene only pop up once in a blue moon. It's already hard enough to get your movies out there in live action. Animation is a huge time and money sink that can lead to utter bankruptcy if the film underperforms. Live action movies already cost less and have more room for error than animated ones. If it weren't for these sequels that make absurd amounts of money, the already existing animation studios would be under the constant threat of going under at any moment. We wouldn't have nearly the same variety of movies and their respective studios that we have today. The only studio that I can even think of that would survive this sequel purge would be Disney, but that's because they have a really unique situation. They have tons of revenue sources that are separate from their films, of which include, but are not limited to, theme parks, toys, and several other television networks. I mean, they own their own local government. That alone tells me that they're an exception to this rule. But smaller studios will not be able to compete without sequels. You've already seen places like Leica struggle whenever a movie underperforms, and their entire philosophy is to only make one-shot movies. This makes every single movie a huge risk, and it shows. Their last film, Kubo and the Two Strings, has only barely made its budget back in the 2 years it's been out. These Sunday sequels are a necessary evil to the animation industry. Without them, the industry as we know it would not exist today. So in the end, like it or not, they're here to stay. These sequels might be bad, they might be boring, and they might be complete wastes of time, but they're also the very things that keep the animation industry afloat. They're sort of like the workhorses of the animation industry. Without them, we'd be in a much darker place right now. So next time when you watch the next boring sequel, just remember, without this movie, we wouldn't have all the great and risky original movies that are released. And that's really all that matters at the end of the day. Anyways, I've been Ally, and until the next sequel releases, I'll see you around.
The past remains present in the future. Time seems endless.